It's been an unforgettable year in farm country, from a wild start to spring planting.
To a harvest that for some is still going on.
But through it all, the farming community has remained strong and pulled together in good times and in bad.
Hello and welcome to Harvest of Thanks. I'm Clinton Griffiths.
I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Betsy Gibbon.
We're coming to you from St. Joe Farm in St. Joseph County, Indiana. Now, this farm was founded by the Holy Cross Brothers and Sisters in 1867.
It was created as a way to provide food to a growing University of Notre Dame community.
Today, this farm is privately owned and has a beautifully restored barn, which has now become a popular site to hold weddings. But it's also still a working farm, and this year, the emphasis was on work. Not just at this farm, but at farms and ranches across the country with so many challenges this year. And it all started even before a crop went into the ground.
A wet and snowy winter bled into a frustrating spring. Too much moisture, snow, and rain pushed planting season into June and in some cases to July. Rivers overflowed their banks, fields and livelihoods were flooded. Crops spent the year racing to mature, and now harvest was also way behind average. Through it all, the impacts of 2019 are likely to be felt for years.
I had probably 80% of my corn planted, you know.
So now the 80% that you planted, how much is underwater?
Oh, about 90%, I'd say. And what's left is just a few acres here and a few acres there.
So
yeah, we're not figuring we're not going to have a crop this year, so.
During our coverage this year, we've seen the loss. We've heard about the challenges and the hardships. I recently traveled to a Missouri river town on the Iowa-Nebraska line, and after so much loss, farmers are still trying to find a way forward and are thankful for what they have. A light rain falls in Hamburg, Iowa during autumn.
Yes, it is. The one thing we don't need.
Quite symbolic for the farmers in the area. Floodwaters covered the river town in March. What stayed are the scars of the past.
And now it's dented in, shoved down due to the weight of the flood grain.
For Mike Woltemath, it's visible in his grain bins, which needed to be cut open because of wet, rotted grain.
Eventually we'll replace the floor. Eventually, we'll probably replace this bottom ring. This is a full year's worth of work, and this flood not only got this year, but last year as well.
He only planted 200 acres this year.
For right now, we're just kind of taking it a day at a time.
It's one of many stories. Mike Stenzel is another who witnessed flooding too.
Hell. Plain and simple.
Busted bins still stand for him.
Majority of our grain that was flooded by the flood is still there.
Stenzel able to plant and harvest a quarter of his acres. Not near enough.
Now we've got 3 different landlords that take half of that. So, we didn't end up with a lot, but we ended up with a little bit.
A surprise just to be harvesting after the year he's had, but it also encourages him for the future.
Do like we normally do. Go back to normalcy.
With wounds still visible, farmers are preparing for what's next.
First time I drove a tractor, I was 7 years old. So this is all I know.
But thankful to still be standing and grateful for who's standing with them.
Most important thing is our family is safe, and I am extremely thankful to all the help we had, when the flood first occurred.
A year for the history books.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Well, amid the weather and the challenges and prices, one farmer is facing a health crisis.
And he's refusing to give up, and he's getting a lot of help. How combining for Curtis has taken a life of its own as our Harvest of Thanks continues.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Welcome back. Well, harvest this year was full of hiccups for many, but for one farmer, it never really got started. But the outpouring of support from friends, family, and even complete strangers captured the hearts of many this year. We got to see firsthand how a simple plan to help one farmer spread like wildfire for combining for Curtis. It's a story that first captured the hearts of viewers in October.
There's not enough words in this world because I never thought I was this important.
Curtis Lewis, a father, husband, and farmer battling stage 4 brain cancer, a diagnosis that was sudden and severe.
It's hard to explain.
It's hard to accept.
Really hard to accept.
We have 4 children.
I want to think it's a dream.
While the whirlwind of events took place and the tragic news was sinking in, compassion was already sparking action.
When we first made it, it really, didn't ever dream it turned into something like it is now.
Ben Brockmeyer and Thad Madsen work for MFA, a local retailer. They decided to take a semi from farm to farm, collecting grain from anyone who wanted to help.
People have already committed about 15,000 bushel.
But that 15,000 bushels turned into so much more.
So we raised through grain donations about $35,000, but really the cool part about it is we got checks from all over the country, really.
The outpouring of love and generosity came from some farmers who personally knew Curtis.
I mean, Curtis, it wouldn't matter if we were doing anything, you could call him and he'd drop what he's doing to help you, so I figured we probably better do the same.
In a year when every bushel counts, many farmers gave more than a bushel.
You're gonna donate an entire semi-load?
Yeah, probably.
But it didn't stop there.
But then you also get people from Kansas and New Mexico and a couple from Texas, and I mean, it's just, people want to help people.
It's truly unbelievable. It restores your faith in humanity, that there really are good people out there that care about you and your family.
That's the amazing thing about the farm community, honestly. 99% of the people who sent checks from outside of the state had no idea who he was.
And the acts of kindness even coming from NASCAR.
I wish you were here. Know you're home taking care of yourself. We'll see you next year, buddy.
He said several times, he's like, I never thought I was that important. And, we all take it for granted that, you don't really think you impact this many people or this person and that person. And it just goes to show what a large impact you have, not even knowing it.
We can't thank everyone enough for everything that they've done for our family. There's no words.
Savoring every minute and moment in life while grasping onto hope that modern medicine will make miracles, as the fabric of rural America reminds us all of the meaning of love and the value of life. Definitely a harvest that captured our hearts. Thanks for allowing us to tell your story. Well, there are so many different varieties of soybeans coming from thousands of different seeds. But how did it all get started in America? Coming up, the history of soybeans in the U.S. and its beginnings in a tiny Midwest town.
These days, farmers produce millions of metric tons of soybeans. But how did soybeans first find their way to America? Well, according to one team of researchers, it all started in the small Midwestern town of Alton, Illinois, and an amazing journey across thousands of miles of land and sea. Settled along the Mississippi River, north of St. Louis, is the small river city of Alton, Illinois, a town with history, reputation, and now known as the birthplace of the modern Midwestern soybean.
Yep, it was a crowning moment.
Yep. We're very proud of this.
These two researchers and library science experts from the Lewis and Clark Community College mark this unassuming spot as the answer to a question long lost to history.
Greg and I received a phone call from our college president, Dale Chapman, who is always tossing us interesting projects and opportunities to investigate.
His question, follow up on research done in the 1980s, pinpointing Alton as the first place to plant soybeans in Illinois.
And said, we would like you to find out where was the location of the first planting.
Hey, can you figure out where specifically? Sure, yeah, we can do that. And so off we went.
But to find that spot on today's map meant traveling back to the mid-1800s to meet Dr. Benjamin Franklin Edwards, brother of Ninian Edwards, the first territorial governor of Illinois and familial predecessor to the A.G. Edwards financial empire.
1849, gold rush fever, California was the place to be.
What he was actually trying to do was capitalize on everyone who was prospecting for gold. Before he went on his way to San Francisco, he purchased what we would now consider prefab houses.
Once he got there, he sold those kits to prospectors so that they would have a place to live while they were prospecting for gold in California.
By March of 1851, Edwards was ready to come home. Cash and Burns believe he was at the port as sailors from a Japanese shipwreck arrived in the San Francisco harbor.
While they were waiting in the port to be allowed to come into the country, Dr. Edwards was able to acquire some of the stores of the seeds that they had on their ship.
We surmised that maybe as a thank you and hey, look what I came back with on my travels, he presented his good friend James Henry Lee with 6 soybean seeds.
James Henry Lee took those 6 soybean seeds and planted them in his garden.
Probably about May of 1851. And in November, there's documentation that they had sent seeds to James Henry Lee's father, John Lee, in Cincinnati.
From there, the seeds would be shared and eventually make their way east to New York and west to Iowa. And while the story sounds simple, connecting these dots to a specific location 170 years later was a challenge.
So again, because we were trying to identify the place, we had to be really secure in the knowledge of who the planter was.
One of the things that we were looking at was the 1850 census. And sure enough, there indicated there was a John Lee living in Alton.
Previous researchers had referenced the same John Lee. The problem? That John Lee had just arrived from England.
So that sparked in our minds the question, how could this John Lee know Benjamin Franklin Edwards, who was out in San Francisco at the time that this John Lee arrived in Alton? There was no way.
Liz had just been digging and found the article from a publication known as the Western Horticultural Review, where it was attributing the planting to James Henry by his father, John Lee, who was located in Cincinnati, Ohio.
It's not hard to imagine that probably back there somewhere is where he put his soybean seeds into the garden.
The place now found, and what started as 6 seeds today covers millions of acres, marked for future generations to appreciate how small acts of humble generosity can multiply to change an entire industry.
Well, thanks, Clinton. I had no idea.
I know, it's a really interesting story.
Especially in one small town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we talk a lot about the stresses and challenges in farm country, but what are some of the best things?
Up next, one farmer who has faced it all has a simple philosophy you have to hear. You know, we talk a lot about the hard parts of farming, the financial challenges, the weather, the trade battles. Well, through it all, there's one farmer who has a pretty amazing philosophy. Growing America shares a bit of wisdom from Shun Binford.
Started in '97, straight out of high school. Didn't want to do nothing else but farm. Wheat crop, 97 bushels an acre. Wheat beans, 5 bushels an acre. I was bankrupt in '98. And, after that, I came back into it with a different attitude. Borrow what you need, not what you want. For me, it's planting that seed and getting a chance to get all the way to the finish line like we are right now. And seeing all what your year of work has turned out to be. And you know, sometimes it's not all that great. Sometimes you work all year and can't pay your bills. And sometimes you get a chance to pay them off. But that's part of it. I believe we all put on this earth to do something. And to farm, you definitely got to be put on this earth to do it, because if you put it on paper, it's not the smartest thing to do. Borrow money, bury it in the ground, come back 6 months later and check it out. And if you do, you do it. If you don't, well, let's do it again, you know?
When we come back, thankful thoughtfulness from John Phipps.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Well, in a year like 2019, it's hard to be positive, let alone try to be thankful. But John Phipps gives us some thoughts from his Illinois farm.
For those of you who've watched the show for some time, you know the drill for Thanksgiving. Tyne does a masterful job of combining touching stories and beautiful scenery in a salute on this day strongly associated with farmers. My job is to follow her lead with some thoughtful words about the meaning of this day. For nearly 15 years, I've given it my best shot, but this is 2019, a year that just won't let up for many. Maybe you're like me and just can't find much thankfulness in your heart. Oh, it's probably there, but buried under loss, grief, and worry. I'm happy to report, however, science may have an answer for you. Psychological research has spawned a whole new field of therapy to help us deal with this problem: cognitive behavior therapy. Discoveries have helped millions cope with unwanted emotions. For our particular problem on this particular day, the recommendation is remarkably simple. Not feeling thankful on Thanksgiving? Just fake it. That's right. Act like you are thankful, even though you don't feel it inside. Smile a little, or at least don't scowl. And if you're struggling to find positive things to say, work on being a good listener for those who do want to share their blessings. Suck it up and be as pleasant and amiable as you can. This will accomplish one thing for sure. Your Thanksgiving dissatisfaction won't be nearly as contagious. But there is a good chance something surprising and wonderful will occur. Your feelings of thankfulness may actually emerge. It seems we've been thinking the linkage between what we do and what we feel is one way. How we feel motivates how we act. Angry people act angry, for example. But cognitive behavior demonstrates it can work in reverse. Doing the things that thankful people do can often generate genuine thankfulness. I know this is the era of authenticity, where the goal is to say what you mean, regardless of the consequences to others and yourself. But a little discretion, tact, and discipline is not deception. It is a route to better outcomes for those around you, and if you sincerely try, a happier, more meaningful Thanksgiving. Since I missed the fall color around here while sitting in a grain cart, I picked this as the loveliest sight on our farm right now. A field without a crop and miraculously without any ruts. This is 2019, and that's something I am truly thankful for.
Thank you, John, and thank you for joining us for Harvest of Thanks. Well, in a year like 2019, it can be hard to find things to be thankful for. I've been through that many of times, living in the middle of Missouri flooded farm fields right now, but it's agriculture's ability to find triumph in the midst of trial, to seek out comfort in the midst of heartache. That's the DNA of agriculture. That's something to celebrate and to be thankful for.
And we want to thank the farmers who battled through those hardships this year, and as they continue to do so into next year too.
And as you spend time this holiday season with friends and family, make sure to be present, to be together, to take time to share each other's company. Put the devices and the distractions away. Leave the worries and the stresses of the world alone. Enjoy each other's company and have a wonderful holiday season.
Good reminder this Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining us for Harvest of Thanks. I'm Tyne Morgan.
I'm Betsy Gibbon.
And I'm Clinton Griffiths. Thanks for watching.